Hi, welcome to Parkesson. Today we're going to be talking about the haunting at Drayton Manor. Now, I recently visited for the first time a couple of weeks ago, and this was the first attraction we went on. We only went on it once, but I think that was enough to experience everything. So I guess the first question is, what is the haunting? Well, it's a Vekoma madhouse opened in 1996. And it's a haunted house style attraction, hence the name. It utilises three free shows to sort of set up and explain the story for the ride. It's worth saying before we continue that there will be spoilers in this video, so please, if you haven't been on it yet, bear that in mind, don't be mad. So the premise of the ride is you are invited to join RIPA, R-I-P-A, which stands for the Research into Paranormal Activity, on an exploration into the depths of the Vicarage. So the experience actually begins with the queue line, which is out the front of the attraction. You walk through two steel gates, you walk through a little courtyard type thing, and then you walk into the queue line itself, which is sort of like, it's like an overgrown front garden. It's quite well themed. There's a couple of props around. It's in the trees, so it's really quite immersive. It's good. It's a good start. However, and this is the first thing I'd like to talk about. Due to the nature of the attraction, they allow one large group of guests into the attraction every 10 to 15 minutes, and this is very, very poorly communicated. There's no screen. There is a sign outside that says this ride runs on a 15-minute cycle, but that doesn't mean anything to normal people, unlike me. I think this poor communication leaves guests feeling confused. I know from reading other reviews that people are like, quite often a lot of people leave thinking the ride's closed, and that's not what you want, is it? At a theme park, you go to a theme park to experience things. You go to go on the rides. You don't want to be left in the dark about what actually happens. So after what feels like an eternity, someone will eventually come along, open the doors, and collect the next batch of riders. So this is where the real experience begins. You walk along a passageway into this kind of long, rectangular shaped room, and on a platform, and there's two screens, one at each side, and you're directed to look at the screens, and you watch the first of the three pre-shows. Now, this video is great. This is my favorite pre-show of the three, personally, because I like the sort of immersion. So it's completely dark in there. There's a few like LEDs around just so you can, I guess, so you can see each other. But this is the video that sets up the story. So you are introduced to Dr. Ghostman on this video, who it's quite a confusing story, to be honest, but the premise of it is you're going into the vicarage to carry out some research. You watch this video, he explains the backstory better than I did and provides context for the attraction, which is a great video. It's a better start than the queue line. So the room itself, although it is dark, you can see quite a lot of the theming around. It's quite, if I'm being honest, it's quite dated. It's quite dated. It looks like it could use a bit of paint, you know. And also the member of staff that brought you into the attraction tends to stand with the group as well. Now, I know this might be a safeguarding or potentially a safety sort of, they have to be there, but it really takes away from the experience, because whilst you're watching the video, you can see them, you know, they'll be looking at the floor, looking at the ceiling, standing around like, wait. It just takes away from the experience. It takes away some of that immersion, and the immersion is really important in a ride like this. You rely on getting completely drawn into the story, and then, you know, you want to be right in there, but it just, you know what I'm trying to say? It just takes away from it a little bit, in my opinion. After the first pre-show, you were immediately led through a door and into a dark and quite dingy passageway, which is really, really well themed. It's sort of, there's flickering lights on the side. They're not uncomfortably flickery, but they're definitely present. And the lights kind of dim a little bit, and then there's an audio track that plays, which further explains the story. Again, the member of staff stands in the corridor with you. We were right at the front, so he was literally stood next to us. Could have given him a hug if I liked, but obviously didn't. That'd be weird. The there's basically, it builds up a little bit of anxiety in this room deliberately. It plays on that really well, and then all of a sudden you're prompted to look at the ceiling, and a skeleton literally pops out and flies across your head, above your head, not across your head, it flies above your head and into the ceiling of the corridor. Now, this is a really cool effect, but I feel like it's only effective if you're stood in the middle, which is another point I'm going to get onto. We were stood right at the front, next to the staff member, having a cup of tea pretty much, and then it flew over the back, so we didn't actually see it. Now, the experience is going to differ for every group, but I felt like it felt a little bit like it should have gone further, or maybe we should have stood further back. Maybe it's our fault. We don't know. But yeah, that's that. However, with that said, it does still provide like a pretty good jump scare, because obviously, like, oh, what was that? It's a skeleton, apparently. You then emerge into one of the Vicarage's main rooms, and you meet the former lady of the house. Now, it's difficult to describe this room. You're looking at a picture. I'll be quiet. There's a big portrait at the front with a projection of this lady. She's quite ghostly. She's a little bit ominous. It's quite clever, really, to be honest. I think that's probably one of the best parts of the ride, is this lady, and she speaks to you, and then she goes a bit weird, and then she it kind of builds up. The lights dim a little bit as well in the room, which is quite subtle, but I noticed it. She sort of keeps talking, and she's quite eerie, quite ominous, and then if you start to look up, you can see ghosts flying around on the ceiling, which is a really cool effect. What I would say is you can very clearly see that the ceiling is flat, which is, I know this is really petty and nitpicking a little bit, but if you go into a vicarage, you know, they don't have flat ceilings. The rest of the room is really well themed, but it's just the top is just white, and you can it kind of takes away some of the immersion again. I'm going to keep touching on the immersion because it's so important in a ride like this. It's just so it's I don't know how to describe it without sounding like a madman, but there you go. From memory, I can't remember exactly what she's talking about, and I don't want to spoil it too much if you haven't been on it. The kind of takeaway point from this room is that the floor shakes at the end, which really, really catches you off guard. And it's sort of it's not much, just a little couple of jolts like that. And it's a really cool, it's like a really, really cool effect. It's my favourite moment of the whole experience, because it's just like, what on earth is going on? That's self-explanatory. Yeah, you just don't expect it, is what I'm trying to say. So finally you enter the vicarage, where the group splits into two halves, which was a little bit chaotic when we did it, because it turns out my group, including myself and Macy, were not very good at maths. It took us quite at least probably 20 seconds to get into these lines, which doesn't sound like a lot, but again, it takes away from that immersion massively. And so by the time we sat down in the vicarage itself, which I'm going to talk about shortly, it was just kind of sitting on a bench. You know what I mean? So the vicarage itself, let's talk about that. There's two benches at each side, all facing inwards. So it's it's a square room, two benches either side, and then in the middle there's a tomb-like structure, which is really, really cool. Actually, I really liked it. There's not much else in the room. There's like a couple of pillars at the sides. There's sort of a little bit of it's a little bit minimalistic in the room, to be honest. You can tell that this ride was built on a budget. I know money's like a big thing for these kind of parks, but it just feels a little bit like there's still work to be done on it. I know it's been open for 30 odd years, but it just still feels a little bit under par, especially when you look at like Hex or Monster Party at Legoland. It's just doesn't, it's not on the same level. Then the ride itself begins. If you've never been on a Vekoma Madhouse, basically the whole premise of it is it feels like you're going upside down, and that's weird. You don't go upside down, but it really feels like it. So the room begins to spin. It spins one way, then it spins the other way, and then the other way, and then it goes all the way over, or it gives the effect of going all the way over. the way it works is really, really clever, and there's a really good video by the expedition. I can't remember his name, but I'll leave a link to it in the top of the description. Expedition Theme Park, that's it. It's a really good video, and it describes really well how these rides work. You spin around for a couple of minutes, and then finally, the climax of the whole experience, the lights go out, still spinning a little bit at this point, and then the tomb opens up. There's quite a cool smoke effect, so it's quite eerie, to be honest. And then a hand just emerges, and that's it. Nothing happens. There's no big jump scare at the end. The lights come back on and you walk out. That's the ride. Is it worth doing? Is it good? Let's discuss. So the whole experience gets off to a really, really poor start with the poor communication in the queue line. There should be a member of staff stood outside, or at least a screen saying, you know, next batch will be allowed in 15 minutes. Next batch will be allowed in 10 minutes. It just feels a little bit under-communicated, and that's a really big drawback for me personally. It just feels under-themed, if that's a word. The first room especially, where you can see the paint like it's peeling off the walls. The ride itself is okay. The cycle's very, very short compared to, I'm comparing this to Hex because it's the best comparison I have. But the cycle is so short on the Haunting, and as well as this, a big drawback again is that the music doesn't play very loud. So there's music in the Vicarage itself, and it's really quiet. So you could be sat next to someone and have a reasonably loud conversation without, obviously, you don't have to shout to speak to the person next to you, is what I'm trying to say. Whereas in Hex, it's blasting, and that really adds to the immersion in a way. Just kind of feels like there's someone's you could play the music off your phone at the same volume. It just doesn't have the same effect. All in all though, I would say it is worth experiencing. The best way I could describe this ride is Hex on a budget. And I think it's quite quaint in the way that it's technically the same ride as Hex, but it feels a lot more homemade. It's just it's quite quaint. It's a lovely ride. I would do it again. That's pretty much all there is to say about it, to be honest. I wish I could end this video saying, oh, this ride, I wish I could have gone into much more detail with this video. I did only experience this attraction once, but I felt that was enough. That might give you context as to how good this ride is. What are your thoughts on The Haunting? Let me know down in the comment section below. That rhymed. Thank you for watching. Have a great day, and I'll see you later. Bye.